Community ecology deals how the many species that live together in a restricted area deal with each other. So the interspecific interactions can be 4 different interactions. Interspecific, that means not within a species but between the different species. It can be the competition, for example, coyotes and bobcats living in the same area, they compete for the same prey, and the resource is very limited. It can lead to competitive exclusion. This is one way as the outcome. And competitive exclusion or resource partitioning, when the fundamental niche, all the resources that a species can or will use, will turn into a realized niche. The realized niche is only part of the fundamental niche. Both of them are due to interspecific competition, the competitive exclusion, and the resource partitioning. The other type of interspecific interactions is the predation. In predation, we have the predator and the prey. The predator can have many advantages over the prey. They can have claws, poison, teeth, stinger. For example, the bear or the western diamondback rattlesnake, they all have some type of advantages. The prey also have some advantages to escape the predation, is the cryptic coloration, the camouflage, chemical mechanical defenses, mimicry, that can be Batesian, harmless organism mimics, and unpalatable ones, and the Mullerian mimicry, when both of the species are unpalatable. The herbivory is basically an animal eats a plant. The plant adapts through toxins and thorns, basically protecting itself. The 4th one, interspecific interactions, is the symbiosis. Symbiosis can be parasitism, when one of the organisms loses advantage and the other one gains some benefits. This is kind of the pinworm or the heartworm. The other type is the mutualism, when both of the organisms benefit from this relationship, like nitrogen-fixing bacteria and a plant living together. And commensalism, when one organism gains, the other one doesn't care about that, like water buffalo and egret in the Uganda's safari. So the community, there's one characteristics of the community that is really important to talk about. That's the species diversity. There's a formula to find out the species diversity. We do not worry about that formula, but the species diversity is made up of 2 components: the species richness, the number of different species that living in the area, and the relative abundance of the organisms in each species, the individuals from the different species. If the species diversity is high, that means the community has greater stability. The community has a better recovery after a disturbance, such as a fire, flood, or mudslide, and the community has a better high resistance against, for example, invasive species. The community's characteristics is also the dominant species. Usually they have a dominant species that is the most abundant species in that community, and also or collectively that species give the highest biomass in that community. Either they are effective users of resources usually, or great avoiders of predation. And the last one is, here is effective users of resources or great avoiders of predation. And the last characteristics that we are going to cover is the keystone species. Some species in the community are act as keystone species, like otters around in Alaska's Aleutian Islands, or sea stars, or wolves in Yellowstone. The community can be affected by disturbance. So the disturbance can change the makeup of the community depending on its scale. If it's small, not that much. If it's big, it really changes the makeup of the community, and also alters the resources that are available for the different species. Disturbances can be fire, flood, and nowadays most of the time it's humans' actions. If disturbance happens, ecological succession will take place, usually after severe disturbance. The ecological succession, how plants will again come back into that community. We distinguish between primary ecological succession and secondary ecological succession. The primary is different from the secondary because primary does not have any soil yet. It can happen after volcanic eruption when the lava flows out, for example, Hawaii and Big Islands. First, the prokaryotes and the protists come, and after that, lichens and moss, as we know about them, they are the pioneer species. Grass will come later on, shrubs and trees. But the whole process, the primary succession, usually takes thousands of years to happen. The secondary succession contains soil and tens to 100 years it takes for them to recover. Example for secondary is forest fire. And the last page is the diversity of the community depends on species interactions with each other through the food web and trophic levels. It also depends on the dominant species and the keystone species. I'm sorry, I left that out. And the different disturbances that alter the community's resources and the different species. Also, the biogeographic factors affect the diversity of a community. The biogeographic factors contain the latitude. Tropical regions contain higher biodiversity compared to temperate or even Arctic regions because of the evolutionary history, and also because higher growing seasons in the tropic compared to the Arctic region, where the summer is a couple of weeks long. And also the biogeographic factor is the climate that is defined by the sunlight and the amount of precipitation. And the last factor that affects the diversity of a community is the area effect, the island effect. And in here, the island is in quotes, that because it does not have to be an island literally in the ocean. It can also be a land on the land, but separated from the other ecosystem. Depending on the size, we have small and big islands. The small has low biodiversity, the big contains big biodiversity. The location, the distance from the mainland, if it's close, the higher biodiversity is. If it's far away, the biodiversity is low. Thank you.